Unfortunately, it's time to talk free agency. But the good news is that this is a real good time to talk free agency because, well, the Browns are in a good position. They have everything they need. All of their key players are locked up for the next 2 seasons at the very least. And if you're the Browns, you're also in a fortunate position to where you have a little bit of cap space and you have some draft capital, at least more than the average team. So you're in a good spot. So what does that mean for free agency? Who should they look to bring in? Who should they look to bring back? Well, let's jump into the tier list maker and talk about that. But before I do that, I want to make sure I give a quick shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. And as always, I start with Michael Matique, Rob Farron, Kyle Stouffer, Lukey from Munich, David Roth, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Sean McGrinty, Joe Bobby, Keith Gerkak, Brad Calbo, Daylon W, Bodie Cook, James McGinty, Arenda Hall, Rex Kaufman, Chad Gimme, David Molinado, Andrew Sadejo, Dylan Hill, Josh Mendor, Joseph Stevens, Eric Green, Jaleel Salim Jr., Martha Krusna, Mark M, TJ Showman, Stuart Moore, Bobo Regretti, Anthony O, David Arndt, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Andrew Hirsch, SSJ Swift, Seth Miller, Mandela Moore, the only Browns fan in Wisconsin, Curtis Bayer, Batman, Rush Sharir, Barack Kumar, John Alver, Beerman 069, Masayua, Buds of Roland, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Justin Cole, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Vivert, CK, Keith Anderson, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Corporal Nick Lopez, Dom Guzzulo, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Billy, Michael Hodenack, Jarrett Austin, Moose Gentry, Patrick F. Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Greg Ehlers, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Chris Phones, Picktown Brown Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Out Dojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Again, guys, thank you for the support. Again, it is so crucial and critical to my ability to do this full time. You guys help so much. Again, guys, thank you for that support, and especially thank y'all to the ones who are going to continue to help on Patreon during the off season. I appreciate y'all 100,000%. But without further ado, let me jump into this tier list maker and break it down. Okay, guys, it's time to go over the list of free agency priorities that I have for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be interesting. All of the people you see here on your screen are people that I want the Browns in one way or another to pursue. These are not people that I would say aren't going to be coming back. The two that I would say aren't going to be coming back would be Larry Ogunjobi and Olivier Vernon. Olivier Vernon, for obvious reasons, torn Achilles at the end of the season, probably won't be ready to play till 2022. Wouldn't make sense to re-sign him. Don't think he's going to get signed anywhere. At that, it's an unfortunate situation, but you know, that is what it is with that. Another person, Larry Ogunjobi, I just don't think the value is going to be right for the price that the Browns would be willing to keep him. And honestly, I think it's time for the philosophy to change on the interior defensive line. I think you need less pass rush focus, finesse guys in the interior of that defensive line, and you need to work on getting bigger bodies in the interior of the defensive line so that run stopping, especially run stopping from the gun up the middle, can be prioritized and stopped, and it allows you to get more athletic on your edges, which will help you against teams like the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs. So knowing that those two aren't going to be on this list, let me explain the tier system that I have here. A tier 1 free agent is somebody who's going to be worth a major financial investment. This is going to be the person or persons that headline the class of free agents, right? This is your big name guy. This is your big money, 10 to 15 to $20 million free agent that you break the bank on. That's who would be tier 1. Signed at almost all costs possible. Tier 2 priority free agents would be either they're guys on the team that would be worth giving a little bit of a raise to, or players who you would like to sign from the free agency pool, anywhere from like $5 million a year to about like $8.5 to $9 million. Mid-level guys that are going to be big contracts, but not huge cap hits that you might be able to get with decent value if some things shake right in the market for the Cleveland Browns. And then tier 3 guys are free agents that I would like to bring back, only if I can get them at a comparable cap hit to what the Browns had them last year, or they're flyer guys that I want to take a chance on, or veterans at the end of their career that I think will end up being relatively cheap, not breaking the bank, sub $5 million a year type signings. Now that that's out the way and the tiers are explained, let me start with the first person that I'm going to put in tier 3, which is Carl Joseph. Now, a little controversial here, but I do think Carl Joseph has some value if he can play less snaps. And what I mean by that is I feel like him and another guy I'm going to put in tier 3, Andrew Sadejo, were just overexposed this year. I think they can serve a role as backups, as utility guys, as extra DBs on some downs in nickel sets that Joe Woods loves to run. I feel like they have some value there. The problem with them is that they were asked to be full-time starters, and they're just not full-time starters. So yes, these two are slow back-end safeties. It caused a ton of problems with coverages this year. But as long as you're not asking them to do that, these are also two versatile guys. Carl Joseph can play inside, can be a backup linebacker, can match up with some tight ends, normally your bigger tight ends, not your more athletic ones. You're not going to put him on Travis Kelce, but you could put him on somebody like Mark Andrews, right, who's not as athletic as he is physical. Andrew Sadejo has value as somebody who can play a little bit slot corner, a little bit nickel corner, be somebody who can blitz, as well as Carl Joseph is somebody who can blitz. A veteran safety, a veteran backup, a guy who can help out in special teams too once you get more depth in that position. So those two, if you can bring them back at a similar number that you had this year, I would be 100% fine with it. You need veterans on this team. The safety depth is so low that you can't afford to let these two walk, just because while they're not good starters, I do feel like they're very good backups. And you need the depth this year and in the upcoming season, because we saw what the lack of depth in the secondary did to this team last season. The next guy I have in tier 3 is my man T. Mitch. Felt like T. Mitch held up well in a lot of times here where he was the number one corner on this team because Denzel Ward was out. Greedy Williams has been out all year. A ton of injuries in the secondary. I feel like Terrence Mitchell has held up as well as you could have expected him to held up, as well as you could have expected him to hold up. I like the work that you have gotten out of Terrence Mitchell. No, he's not the greatest corner in the world. No, he's not worth a ton of money. But I do think you can give him a little bit of a raise, right? I think he's like at a $3 million cap hit. I wouldn't mind upping that all the way to $5 million for 2 years and keeping Terrence Mitchell in brown and orange, because I do think he's a great utility corner, somebody who can be your second corner and you'll be fine with alongside Denzel Ward. Or you can have Greedy Williams back and Denzel Ward and have the added flexibility of either having him as an extra outside corner and maybe move Denzel Ward inside on some sets to handle some elite slot receivers. I like the flexibility that you can get if you keep all three of these guys in the secondary and then build on top of them in the draft and free agency, as well as just getting back healthy, getting Greedy and Grant Delpit back, and hopefully they play at the level that they can play at. That will mean a lot if you can add just a couple more decent pieces. So I like bringing those guys back. I understand the secondary. Not a lot of people are just jumping to bring them back, but not at the same capacity that they played at this year. At a smaller capacity, but they're not paid a ton, so it would make sense to bring them back to play a smaller role, given that they're not expensive at all. Another guy I want to bring back from the Browns, Cody Parkey. You know my pet peeve with kickers, especially when you have a good offense. Just make the extra points. And for the most part of the season, Cody Parkey has made the extra points. No, he cannot kick a long field goal. No, from 40 out, it's a gamble. But the Browns offense is good enough to where you should not be relying on Cody Parkey to make multiple 40-plus yard field goals. Really, if all things are perfect with how good this offense can be, you're not asking Cody Parkey to go out there and kick field goals often, right? Maybe you get stalled in the red zone. He has to go out and kick a sub-40 field goal. That's fine. He's good for that. making extra points. He's good and consistent in that. Made some tough extra points in the wind this year. I think the one miss he had at an extra point was because of a 15-yard penalty from Jarvis Landry for taunting. That was kind of BS. So Cody Parkey, he's been fine. You guys know with kickers, I don't need them to have the leg. I don't want a Harrison Butker. I don't want a guy who can make the 50-yard field goal, but is going to be shaky on the extra points. I just need somebody for this team who can make the extra points. I don't care if you can make the 60-yard field goal because that's not going to be that useful. And if you're trading in accuracy or consistency on the extra point for extra range, I just don't think it's worth it. Cody Parkey is fine in that position. And I don't want to see them draft another kicker and do the whole competition thing. If Cody Parkey makes the extra points, just let him stay, right? Another guy I want to bring in on kind of a flyer deal. Now we're talking about actual free agents now that we got all the Browns guys for tier 3 out the way. John Ross III. Now, this is a name familiar from my trade ideals video where I wanted the Browns to kind of pursue John Ross because of Odell's injury. I just think for the wide receiving room, while you have good players when healthy, Odell, Jarvis, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I do feel like after that, you have a drop-off in utility wide receivers. And what I call a utility wide receiver is somebody who is out there for a specific set of plays, right? John Ross would be out there pretty much to catch the deep ball. I think he could be very useful in that role. Another guy you can pursue would be a Brashard Perriman, depending on what the injury situation is. You can also pursue a guy like D.D. Westbrook, who has played with Baker before. Both Brashard and D.D. have played with Baker before, albeit D.D. at Oklahoma, Brashard in Cleveland in the NFL. So John Ross is a guy on the top of my list because he does have a ton of upside. Let's say that somebody gives you a great deal for Odell Beckham, like a player and some picks that you need desperately, then you can feel good about getting rid of Odell Beckham if you wanted to go that route and just having John Ross be there to fill in for the deep routes because, again, the problem the Browns had, they had nobody to take the top off the defense. At least you would have some insurance if that's the route you tend to go down. Now, I, for one, don't think they should or that they will trade Odell, but again, you want to make sure that you have more than like JoJo Natson to be the deep threat. And I think John Ross is a great investment. Put him in that wide receiving room with the Jarvis Landry, with the Odell Beckham, two guys who are great leaders, great practice players, and just see if you can squeeze some growth out of him, squeeze some maturity out of him that maybe Cincinnati wasn't. And I think you might be able to find a little bit of a gem in the rough there with John Ross and get a good year out of him. Another guy I want to see if he has anything left, Aldon Smith. Look, he's athletic still. He did not have a ton of sacks last year with Dallas, but he'd had a good year as far as grading out as a pass rusher. And I think with the Browns, the philosophy on the defensive line should be get physical and get bigger on the interior of the defensive line and get more athletic on the outside. I think the philosophy for a long time with this team has been, let's get somebody opposite of Miles. That'll help Miles. I don't think that's what helps Miles with how teams protect him or go against him with protections. I think what will help him is having somebody who's athletic on the outside that's going to demand some level of help because of their athletic ability, and then having really physical, strong guys in there to take up double teams or to force double teams on the interior so Miles can be free on the outside to maybe just have a chip and a tackle to deal with. So that's what I want to see, somebody like Aldon Smith. You could also throw Tack McKinley out there as another guy you could throw a flyer at that would be cheap. Either of those would be fine. Mike Daniels is somebody I would pursue in tier 3 here. Why? Because he's going to be cheap. He's physical. He's proven. You saw the game he had against Pittsburgh. Big run defender, strong guy. Would be a great third or fourth tackle in your rotation. I like him a lot. I've been trying to get him on this team for a long time, but the Browns have never acquiesced or showed interest, so I don't think it's going to happen. And this wouldn't be a great fit. But Jonathan Hankins would also be a suitable replacement as somebody who's also big and strong, a good run defender, and he's coming off of a decent season, I think, with the Raiders. Now we're going to move into tier 2. And as I said, tier 2 are guys you would bring back and give them a little bit of a raise, or free agents that you would sign, in that mid-level area, anywhere under about $10 million. And Rashard Higgins is going to be the first one on this list. Now, I don't expect him to make anywhere near $10 million, but I do think you can re-sign him to about $5-6 million a year, have it laid out in a way that's not going to be a huge cap penalty. And I think that'd be good for Rashard. He has been so vital. His connection with Baker in the red zone especially is something that I think is going to be very useful. He does make mistakes from time to time. You talk about the couple of fumbles he had against Baltimore, the fumble out the back of the end zone against Kansas City. He has a tendency to make mistakes in some big moments, even going back to his rookie year where he tried to make a play in a game against the Dolphins, I think, and he ended up fumbling on that play. So this has been an issue with Rashard going on a couple of years now. It's a little bit alarming, but he does come up in big moments outside of that. And I do like Rashard there. I think he's a nice little safety blanket for Baker Mayfield, and he's a luxury piece you can afford while Baker's on his rookie deal. So I would like to bring him back. Another guy I would like to bring back and give a little bit of a raise to is Malcolm Smith. He was a good coverage linebacker this year. B.J. Goodson would also be in tier 3. I forgot to get a screenshot, so just imagine B.J. Goodson's there in tier 3 because he is going to be a free agent. I do want to bring B.J. Goodson back, and he's a fringe tier 3, tier 2 guy. But Malcolm Smith and B.J. Goodson, you got good linebacker play out of them, much better linebacker play than I would have expected they would get. So I would definitely be up to bringing them back. Now, this is where we're going to get a little bit controversial with the list now. Jadeveon Clowney is somebody I would still be interested in bringing in. Now, I get if a lot of fans are just done with Jadeveon Clowney at this point. I get it. I don't blame you. But I think he would be helpful. He could stop the run. He's always injured. That's the problem. But, if you can sign him under $10 million, that's a cap hit you could take or a risk that you'd be more willing to take with him. And the fact of the matter is, every time he gets hurt, whatever defense he was on goes from being pretty decent to pretty terrible. So he does have an impact there. I get that stats aren't high. I get that the numbers don't look great with Jadeveon Clowney, but he does have a massive impact in the run game. And again, stopping the run for this team in this division should be a priority. And I think he's one of the guys that are going to be available that might not be super expensive since he's coming off injury, since he hasn't had a great year in a couple of years. That might be cheaper. And I think he does still provide a great impact. Now we're going to get to the safety conversation. And this is a tricky conversation for the Cleveland Browns because they still have Grant Delpit. And Grant Delpit's recovering from an Achilles injury. So on one hand, the plan can be, hey, Grant Delpit's going to come back from his Achilles injury. We don't need to panic at free safety. We can go in there with what we got. Don't make any major changes and see what we got with Grant Delpit. Now, if this team weren't in win now mode like they most definitely are now, that would be fine. But now this team is in win now mode, and you can't afford to put yourself in a situation to where you're going to have the same guys getting overexposed at safety. So I would say the two guys they should consider, Marcus Williams and Marcus May. Why? Because they're good starting quality safeties, but they're not going to be expensive or overly expensive. Justin Simmons is going to be really expensive. Anthony Harris is going to be extremely expensive. These guys, you might be able to get at $10 million or below that or very close to that. And I would be okay with that. One of them, obviously, you don't want to sign both of them, but Marcus Williams or Marcus May, those are the two targets for the Browns. They're in that 26-year-old range that the Browns love to sign these free agents at. That's who I would target and give a nice little deal there too. Another area where I think the Browns should attack in that tier 2 range of contracts is the slot corner position. And the two guys I have here are Mike Hilton, who will be more expensive, but he's a much better player, or Desmond King, who is more unproven. He's more versatile than Mike Hilton, and he's going to be less expensive than Mike Hilton. So pick your poison on there. Mike Hilton will probably be $6 million a year to $7 million. Desmond King will probably be anywhere from $4 to $5 million a year. So not expensive at all. But Mike Hilton does provide, he's a better blitzer. I think he can do a little bit more from the slot position. I think he's just more of a solid slot corner. But Desmond King has the ability to play inside and outside with the depth issues that the Browns had all year. That's something that's intriguing as well. So that's what I have for tier 2. I like what I have there. I like the different choices that I have for the safety and slot corner positions here. And then my tier 1 guy, obviously, it's Leonard Williams. You talk about getting bigger, more physical, and better against the run. This is the guy to sign. He's going to be expensive. We're talking anywhere from $12 to $18 million is probably the highest the Browns are going to be willing to go with a guy like Leonard Williams. But that's the opportunity there to get somebody who's really good inside next to Miles to replace Larry Ogunjobi and to be an upgrade in that area, especially against the run. Leonard Williams is also a decent pass rusher, takes up a lot of space, and a guy that offensive lines have to pay attention to. And if you line him up next to Miles, that puts a lot of offensive lines in a lot of interesting and compromising positions that if you have more athletic people on the edge opposite of Miles, they can take advantage of. So that's what I would like to do. That's where my mind is as of now, the very, very early parts of free agency on where the Browns should go. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.